So first of all, that was an amazing experience to listen to your presentations. And I would like us to have, first of all, the reflection on the very general aspects of sustainable design. So obviously, you're probably very familiar with the classical definitions of sustainable design, and maybe this is not the perfect place and moment to go through them, but through the experience that you all have in the converting the spaces and embracing the change, this green change that is the new paradigm in architectural design and the city development moment. There are probably particular challenges that you distinguish through your practical contact with the conversion of a space that are particularly important. So obviously, we're not here to redefine what the sustainable development is, but rather what would you pinpoint as the most important challenge of a very current time? So whoever wishes to address it at first is very welcome.
Yeah, thank you for your comments and very interesting question. I would say that the main challenges, at least from France perspective, but I'm sure that we share a lot of challenges together, would be going from a linear system of urban development and urban and architecture and in general just space making, going from this very linear where any single stakeholder, professional, companies, etc., is more in this linear process again and do intervene at a specific time. It has obviously some advantages, but I would say that the main challenges would be that to allow some actors or stakeholders, perhaps that are intervening late, to go back from the very beginning. This is what actually we are dealing with today. Obviously, to make inhabitants, for instance, propose their projects and ideas and to listen to what they have to say, their experience. And I think as designers, we are very well aware of that. So there are already some changes and transformation in that process. But I would say this could be the main challenge for me, because of course there are a lot of research in material, how you can make architecture with different and low tech, etc. There are lots of initiatives and we do have a lot of solutions, but I would say it would be more in the overall process and this chain of stakeholders to shift somehow the paradigm and to try again to deal from another angle better than trying, which is obviously necessary, but to deal with the challenge with techniques only or only with skills. Or we've seen like there are some very great proposals, but I would say change this to a more circular way and perhaps to have an iterative. This is as well, that's what we were thinking about, is like having it more iterative. And this is what's on the island of Nantes, for instance. Paul Shemetov, who's an urban planner who plans an evolutionary urban guide or urban plan made possible. There were some places where he didn't propose with his team anything. And there were like empty spaces where it would allow to have evolution. And I think this idea is very interesting because lately and these last centuries, we've been dealing with that. No? It's like you have space, you fill them and you put and you determine also some uses. We would like to have it clear that this space is for this and we target users. But I think that you can have some guidelines where there is nothing and perhaps leave it for this iterative process. Maybe we can think about later, make other stakeholders. So this again, I think would be an interesting idea to be less determinist somehow and leave just uncertainties. And of course, we are very much concerned now by those uncertainties with climate change. So this is also a quality, this form of resilience, to be able to rebuild, to rethink about it in a continuity, whereas as a way to, you think about the program, you deliver it, and that's okay. It's also how it will evolve and to make it more flexible. And there are lots of course, designers, architects, urban planners, which are thinking about that. Eric Daniel Lacombe, which is a famous architect in France, has proposed some neighborhoods where it allows flooding. So all the architecture is made so as to allow flooding, and it doesn't change the life in the rural neighborhood. So this is also a way to make it more flexible. And yeah, that would be interesting, I think.
Yeah, obviously, that would be something that we want to see. And when you were saying that, I was imagining that the biggest problem in this iterative process of feedback, which is a beautiful idea, that's contradictory somehow to the timelines and the cycles in economy and investment, at least as we know it today. Do we have any thoughts or experience on how to make those two processes somehow collinear or at least coherent to each other? So it's all about making economical cycles quite much more coherent with the aims of the circular economy. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Yes, I have the idea. Maybe this is my also education that I do agree with what Sophie told before. And because I think that we have to work maybe in a different way. It means I try to explain and synthesize what I think. It's that we have to change, to work together and change, not change, have more flexible sight. It means that economists, for example, should attend classes or group of work with designer, artists, botanical researcher, and so on, because they have to move from their comfort zone and to try to understand what is happening around them. Because we come from a Western specific culture. Everything is, for example, I'm an art contemporary. I have to know everything about art, but only art. So I have to go deep in art, but design. What is design? Architecture, yeah, we have contact in the Renaissance and so on, but it's not this. I think also my experience that if I work with, for example, an engineer and a physician, not a physician, a physics and economist, I can take from them some skills, some point of view, and the same for them. So to finish my speech is that we have to change position. This is very psychological. To better understand the others and and to do a good communication, we have to move position, but remaining in the circle. I hope to.
Oh, thank you for this view. And I think that in a way, this way of communication that was established between the economical standpoint and the other stakeholders and positions is nicely exemplified by the city life development. But that was then reached through the forced policy
Of the municipalities.
I'm also kind of intrigued by how it was achieved that those municipalities gave those policies. Who forced municipalities to force such policies on the
Yes,
businessmen?
because it's a group already oriented on arts. And also because at that time, but also today in Milan, there is a mid-left party who is very centered about of the city. So they think to people, not only to money. Even if Milan is the capital of money, of finance in Italy. Yes, sometimes dreams are happening.
Yeah, and the same happened as well, to answer your question, because it's true that we oppose like economy and like the idea of finding fundings and sustainability, and there are very much good examples to show that it's possible. For instance, in Pirmil-les-Îles, which is the area I just mentioned, we can have a look at a map, but it's a huge area where the city And I do agree very much with that. They decided they will do innovation there. And that they will actually bring, as I mentioned, constructions, representative, some designers, some developers that were not used to that. They're like, what are we doing here together? Because we're supposed to answer your guidelines. We're not supposed to think about your own specification. And actually, it was very much successful in the sense that everybody, of course, dedicated much more time but because they wanted to invest, for instance, in Nantes, there are 120 developers. And of course, they won't survive all. And some of them were actually concerned and in danger, and some of them closed. So they accept those rules because they think that it's better for us to adapt their strategy economically. Not only to put on the paper that it's a green or whatever, but because they really need to change also. So they, at the end of the day, of course, many developers said, but the specification at the end of the process were too precise because they were realistic somehow, and because the municipality really wanted to have those housing available to and accessible to all the population. Half of it is social housing. The legal obligation is 25, so it's double. And the other half is something like 4,000 euros per square meters, which is really low if you consider the price in the area. So developers, of course, some of them said, it's too much, it's too precise, we can't create something or propose something because it's too precise. But at the end of the day, they could innovate together, and they showed that actually there is a way not to oppose the economy and the sustainability. Yeah.
So that's an amazing example. And would you rather say that this is a exception from the rule that generally municipalities still are not on a level of enough care towards the sustainable design and sustainable art?
What I think is that yes, it's exceptional. And another layer, perhaps, to our discussion is that we could see that this was actually the desire and the determination of individuality. And that there were among Nantes Métropole Aménagement, the planner, some people which individually, as leaders, were convinced that it was necessary, and that perhaps will also, the same deal with you need some individuality, because of course we are working with the inhabitants and there are a lot, but the leaders have also to be convinced of the necessity to go forwards.
The reason why I'm asking is to compare it to our Polish situation. Very often we kind of see the scene of within a city with the municipality leaders. And I wanted just to know whether with all of your experience in participatory design, participatory planning, do you think that the idea of education or educating the municipal leaders is possible, and what kind of strategies would you recommend? Empowering them, and how can we empower them to take
this
such a
is
role?
actually what we
I know.
No, it's okay, because actually this is what we are doing. And with Nantes Métropole, you've seen that we have a lot of projects with them because we have actually some subvention from them. So every 5 years we renew the contract, and there is a very specific process. Every year, different departments and services propose a theme for the School of Design and the partnership. So as labs, we do select, okay, this theme is really great, we have this work, etc. So we choose some subject. And why is there this subvention is because the city wants also to learn about design, and because they want design to enter in their rooms, like their decision making. So this is actually how it works. And after some projects, they are also acculturated to design. Again, the will, I would say, because the municipality, they chose to work with the city, with the School of Design, and they want to know more, because there is also a bit now this fashion of design also these last years, and nobody really know what it is, and they have a random idea before we're just doing chairs, and it's like, what? You're not only doing chairs and seats? And so when you speak about public policy, I can't imagine that. But yeah, step by step, they're acculturated to design, and then they can also think with those methods other projects. And it's first, it's really vertiginous when you start what's happening. And then they suddenly see something, and it's developing. So that's hopefully possible. Yeah.
In Italy, it's not like in Italy. I think it's something like in Poland. If you want to have a dialogue with the leaders, is so hard. And no, it's true. And they, how can I say, look at the culture, so design, architecture, and so on, from a point of view of opportunity, also personal opportunity. And this is not good at all. But there are some differences, like in Milan or also in Bologna, in the region. So I think that, for example, in Italy, what it works is if you have a project that is inside the European main guides and so on. So if you create a link, even theoretical, but with the European policies, they look to you in a different way, even if it's your idea. Yes. And you have to present everything like also a personal opportunity. This is so sad to tell, but this is, I have to admit, what is happening in Italy in the last years. So we have to be very strong, very to convince, very to have, yes, the mindset to say, I don't break down till I don't have meetings and so on. So take.
We need to be strong. That's the first
Don't
thing.
give up.
And don't give up. I'm not saying that in Poland we don't have good examples of the nice correlation of the city leaders. That's not what I wanted to say, but rather that's the exemptional case, that there's like singular cases rather than a pattern. We're not there yet. So I wanted just to know, how did you do that? That you had those changes in their mindset. But also, when I was seeing all of those conversions that you were talking about, those beautiful gardening and greening of the places, of the spots that you were mentioning, I had the thought about the maintenance and the responsibility for the continuity of a project and continuity of a converted space. What are your experiencing in such a problem? Because we somehow diagnosed that it's even not that difficult to plant something in the public space, but it's more difficult to make it relatable by the community, or at least even if the community feels initially related to that, then there is this responsibility of a common space and the maintenance. So what is your prescription for that? A recipe?
I'm not a policymaker or involved with the policy making. So from architect point of view, we actually see each project like a baby, not a situation. There's like a baby, meaning baby, not that I love it so much. Of course, we love our projects, but that you are actually making the baby in such a way that it could be healthy and growing without you after the designer is gone. So you were asking questions about maintenance, how you can keep going. If the parents has to be there feeding the baby when the baby is 30, 40, 50 years old, then the parents is a failure. So we were thinking that each project has in such a way of combination of the way it's built and how also it's envisioned after it's the programming and how it's being used should be self-sufficient. That this is Kenneth Fenton told me, my teacher, that you cannot be an architect just saying, oh, I make a project, I take my photograph, and I'm finished. Think about in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. So all the projects we had, it has some elements of commerce or way of making enough revenue even without the government's help, because the government help stops at some point, that it could keep on going. And of course, the ability to have very low maintenance cost is also very important. So that we see in a situation like a baby, but also a situation that we plan it out in about 30 years or 20 years. Of course, it's very ideal. Things happen along the way.
But I think you have an amazing example in the project you made with Village. I was pretty amazed by that. And I think it's also an answer for that, because it's pretty obvious, as with the sensitivity you brought to the project and the idea that you use different codes to work with inhabitants and also to ease this conversation, and then the way you involved also some local companies, local people to build it. It makes it also a responsibility you share with them, and it's also a very good answer, I think, is to that, to make people somehow responsible for that, to allow them to have the craftsmanship, the skills, the sensitivity, and the will to just take care of it is also, I think, determinant and pretty obvious is in this example.
Thank you, Sophie. Actually, that if we didn't do it that way, that project probably would have died during the COVID, because for 3 years it was impossible for people to travel, even within cities. So if it was a totally capitalistic approach, say everybody out and we make fancy hotels and for rich people in the city, that project would have died 2021, 2022. It would have just finished, because there was local people involved and farmers were still living there and they were coming back. Somehow it survived 3 years, 2 years without visitors. And then now it's okay and it's thriving again. So I think this way of, I think morality, ethics is also good business sense in some ways. It's not only to be moral and to say I'm so moral, but actually to involve people and to do the right things is also a good business sense in these situations. And maybe not before the COVID, because there was so much money, it doesn't matter. But you see everything's broken down after the COVID, the human relations, financial relationships. And then you see it's actually this way of working is actually maybe slower and more patient, but it somehow pays off. And this is our, sort of our attitude in our projects.
While you're saying, I have this thought that this is more resilient, this kind of economy is more resilient to crisis, because it's based on the community and the long-lasting relations, not on the opportunity that is provided for in a given moment.
Yes.
Based on the community. I also hope that in this city life project, when we saw there those urban gardens, that were somehow maintained by the citizens, if I understand it right.
And not from the rich people.
So there is a way. So we have an agent for maintenance, patrons.
Yes.
They want their show.
Yes, they want such a nice free towers. They want power, they want money, so they pay to have. No, I'm joking, but it's true that the condition of the municipality was only to create and maintain. But from the pictures you can't see, but it's very crowded, because also the connection between garden, leisure time, and so on, but shopping center, cinema, under is perfect. Also because Milan, if you have been, is such a crowded town, and so you have really to breathe.
Somehow creating environments that are eco-friendly, because right now it became a posh phrase.
Yes.
It's somehow converted into a project, into a product.
Yeah.
And to some extent, it makes, my first thought is that it's rather not okay. But then the economy is a language of products and prosperity, and if we think twice, maybe this is not such a bad idea to somehow actually try to calculate the value that the ecological design would provide for the city. And this is all of these are issues connected with the valuation of ecosystem services. And tell me, what are your thoughts on that? Meaning that how would you tackle this problem? How would you evaluate those ecosystem services? What are your experiences?
Yeah, I don't know if I have some, again, solution, but what you say is interesting and make me think about something else. The issue is linked to what you said also, Marinella, is more than that political, the mayor or the government in general, they have to sell a program. a program that they have to implement and that will be instantly evaluated, but in 5 years. The issue is that, and the interest also is that if you are building more resilient space, you would see for the economy that it's more interesting in 10, perhaps 15, perhaps 20 years. So they won't take the benefits from that, but instead we would perhaps say that it was costly, more costly or more time consuming or more complicated and etc. So we would just evaluate that, and it makes the mayor, for instance, less prone to take that risk also. So this is also an issue of how you consider time in the project. And yeah, it's also something, somehow it's more than a problem than, sorry for that, than a solution, but it has to be tackled somehow and considered as well.
So another cycle that needs to be somehow, let's say, compared when it comes to its rhythm. So the political cycle, we're not even talking about the economical cycle, but then the political cycle being this 5 years, most commonly 4 to 5 years. So maybe it's not only about the evaluation of ecosystem services, but also about partial evaluation.
Yes.
In between periods. So you don't have the final result, but there is something that you can somehow measure in between the periods.
Thank you. That's a solution.
Yes.
So now we need to work.
Yes.
For midterm.
Yes. For example, in Bologna, Le Serre is not like a Nobel project made by a very well-known designer, but all the people wants to go there, and the region put 2 million to restore. And they were very happy because what it comes back, that the people goes there, attend it, wants to be there. And this is because sometimes there are not only money, but there is what we search for, our value of society. Yeah.
So if we find a way to somehow evaluate or apply comparable measures to the happiness.
Indicators. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's this, we have to agree on, value indicators. For instance, what you're mentioning should be a value if there are more people. This should be somehow considered and put on the balance. Perhaps the challenge is to agree on the indicators of midterm indicators that we value. Of course, we can't have everybody. We're not believing in an ideal situation, but to agree on that.
Also because Le Serre doesn't have money to do advertisement. So it's word by word. I was there. You have to go. This is so it's a very cheap project from this point of view. But if it's a success among the people values, it.
Yeah, so there is a very big value out of every euro that was paid into that, or invested into that. That's great. And I also wanted to ask you, how would you comment on the fact that was noticed by Montgomery that cities becoming wealthier, as we see this process quite recently, failed to become happier? So probably this is a cliche and obvious phrase, but within the projects that you showed to us, can you somehow give a hint how to measure the impact that produces more happiness between citizens? Because, economical effects are easy to be measured. We've got just the money, and this is simple. But do you have any thoughts on how to measure the level of happiness in your cities?
Yes, if I can start first. In 2018 in Europe, it was the year of the cultural heritage. And I have a friend of mine, is a worldwide cultural economic researcher. And the Europe did the research about the wellness and the happiness of people. And they discovered that when you go to see a museum, an ancient palace, an ancient city, you go to Serre and so on, or to the town, the ancient town, or other activities related to something very deep in a person, the cortisol, yes, goes down, but in a very important average. And so they discovered that that we could spend less and less money for remedies, pharmacological remedies, against depression and so on, and to bring people to visit. This is so funny, but it's true. And we have a treasure that we even imagine how valuable it is.
Yeah, I would. Yeah, obviously, I think it's an important parameter, but there were also some very pragmatic studies that I will just robe and mention from a book written by Philippe Biwix and Clémence de Selva on the stationary city. And they did actually evidence on a graph showing the link between materiality and the happiness of people. So it's more pragmatic in the sense that obviously the happiness, long-term happiness, is determined by material. First, having a home, being able to eat and to answer your basic needs. So the happiness goes with the materiality until a certain point. And even if you have more material, there is this gap then between the materiality and the happiness of people. And I think this is when we have to stop. Actually, it's too much, then it's not necessary for the material you have. It's not linked with your happiness. But having said that, who determines when we stop and how we do it differently? That's a huge question. But then, yeah, it's also interesting to consider that, yeah, of course, through art and social link, that's, yeah, I was just mentioning that having social relationship allows you to lower your risk of having a premature disease, for instance. And that's today 1% by 4. This is some data from World Health Organization. 1% out of 4 is suffering from social isolation. After 60 years, I think, something like that, 55 and less. And this is something also we have to deal by making those places available for culture, for social links, which is determinant to happiness and health. Yeah.
So maybe we can change the indicators measured in euros into the indicators measured in the level of cortisol. That'll be something. So this is how we measure the quality of the city in the cortisol levels of their citizens. Okay, I think we can introduce questions from the audience. If you feel like it, please feel like it. Please feel very welcome to do so. If not, there is a danger that we will go even deeper into an academic discussion. So beware and ask your questions, please.
Even if you disagree.
That's a very good question. So
Never
how do you
rest.
I rest in nature. I live in Bologna, in this ancient central city in the middle. It's wonderful because I'm an art historian, so I have Gothic, Renaissance, but this is an ancient street. I have no trees. And for me, it's because I'm living there since 5 years and it's starting, I feel a little bit upset. So I take in 1 kilometer and 50 meters, I go to 7 because in Italy we have this nice and anti-cortisol tradition to take aperitivo, to take spritz. So we go to 7, take spritz under the nature. I'm joking, but it's true.
Partially.
Yes, partially.
And this is the spritz indicator.
The spritz indicator that I drank also here in Poznań. I'm happy that we can share together. And no, the nature for me is through the nature I can going on to learn how to stay well because Italy is so constructed, is so crowded, so many people, too much. We are 60 million in a narrow country.
Yes, and you also invite a lot of people from outside. The tourism is pretty high. So yeah, very dense, very condensed place in the world. Okay.
But I would be curious of your answer because you have so many projects.
How do we rest? I think there's two different kind of rest. One is to stop everything you're doing because you are physically exhausted. But I think nowadays people are not so much physically exhausted because we're not doing so much physical work. We're mentally exhausted or emotionally exhausted. And the way I fight that is to switch channels. So for me, I was in Milan for 2 days and coming to Poznań for 2 days. I'm not tired because it was a new experience, a new way of interacting. It's a different energy. When I'm working, in between meetings, I paint or I do some writing, which is a different way of a different channel for the mind. So I think we talk about cities as if they are concrete, unmovable things, but because they seem to be made of concrete and asphalt and glass and very hard material. But actually, they are just like plants. And they're just like people. They are moving. The cities, the construction, if you see a film of any city speed up 100 years ago, very fast, you can see it's moving like a plant or like a baby going up and going down. So when I see cities, I never see them as a set of buildings or roads or physical things, and then we are the moving things. We all are moving. We're moving at different speeds. We are moving maybe a little faster, and the city is moving, but it's not visible because we're not watching it every day. But for me, when I experienced this city, this morning was beautiful walking around the old town. A city is not just the building, it's the building and the surrounding and the people's energy and how they use it. So the same city 5 years ago, which was very happy for people, could be the exact same architecture, and 5 years later could be miserable. And I'm experiencing several cities like this, going there exact same places, and it feels completely different. The people, the energy, the way, the things they talk about, their state of being, their state of mind, especially after COVID. So it really changed me because I was trained also in the West and totally academically thinking cities as a set of maps, a set of surroundings and set and how you use it. But now I see it as almost like a stage. And the same stage, the same actor could be different place. One day is a tragedy, the next day is a comedy. Maybe it's comedy, tragedy, and irony.
My life, this is. But what I wanted to say is that you clearly see that we're talking with workaholics, so not much of a rest in the traditional sense. Yes,
Yeah, and
switching
this is
channels,
something.
that's the bypass now, isn't it? That's a U-turn. But
Yeah, and this
true.
is something
good.
to be taken seriously, the work, because last year in September there was a study published from in France, but I think similar in Europe at least. That showed that actually in the 1980s at work, people in general had 20 minutes to do a task in general. And nowadays we have 4 minutes to do a task. And then the study was interesting also because it said that 50% of the workers do answer to an email within an hour. And as well, the multitasking has to be taken seriously. And I think that it's hard to get a rest to answer, honestly. And sometimes, I won't go into details, but it's really time consuming for work. For my part, personally, I play drum, and it's not professionally. Come on, come. But it's a way to just, in the respite, there is also this idea to cut.
It's always art.
Exactly.
You
So
don't need anti-cortisol.
yeah, and exactly, I have my cortisol indicator. But I would say this is also a way to find some respite, just to shut the door of work at least, and then
If we had speeded up, already the time of tasks done in the work environment, maybe we can also learn, maybe, I don't know if it's sustainable, but maybe we can learn to change the channel more efficiently. So we can just become, and I think this is the idea of respite that the festival is also introducing, to be able to shut the door behind you quite efficiently and quickly, just to allow for small doses of rest in between of your tasks. So maybe we can easily see what's bad in the pace of the work environment, but maybe you can learn something from it and just learn how to quickly rest and quickly get into the mode of resting. I don't know what you think.
or come to Poznań. I'm having rest in Poznań very much. Yeah, I do appreciate.
Yes, me too. But also, from a very simple point of view, I decided already since some months to turn off my phone. Yes, and when I need, for example, if I have to write a text that is a theoretical text, I turn off everything. No, I can't be always interconnected not so. For me, to me, it's too much. I have to take a rest. The nature is very good. I'm happy because in Bologna there are many in the city, and so you can walk. For me, nature, I understand your habit, but I can't stand because for me it's too much. I'm happy to be here. It was like a rest, and also a rest where I learned so much from Poznan, from you, all of you. But afterwards, I need time also to make all this experience going inside me. No, I need to process it. Thank you. But it's like
True. Very
with
good.
music, drums, with the sound of it.
There is a lot of potential in breathing, and it's a quick solution for rest. Okay, do we have any questions from the audience? Please do have some questions, please.
Or you can tell us how you have rest.
So it's a little bit from different point of view, but it was present in your presentation that I thanks a lot. I learned a lot and it was really great to be with you. So my question is about how to interact with inhabitants in the city. We have designers, urbanists, and all other actors. And then the most important, I think, is habitants, the users, or we can differently call them. So which tools or in which way you are involved them in different projects? It's my question.
Thank you.
Yeah, actually, this is what we're implementing. You've seen for any of our projects. I would answer it's not specifically a question again of which tool, because we have lots of material to conceive workshops and some games, and our students are really good in designing some games to have those interactions and stuff. Rather than having tools, again, it's the overall process. And in that, it's how important would the inhabitants' point of view be important. For the case I was showing in Plessé, we had this very particular political context that the mayor, actually, she was designated by the party who won the election. So already there is this collective idea, right? They won without any candidates first, and they designated Aurélie Mézières, who's that. And for that reason, they do consider very much the importance of the point of view. So again, it's the process. When we were working with them, it did infuse much more, and any single decision was taken collectively. So you would say it's very, again, some specific case, and how do you implement that somewhere else? Again, I think it will, sorry for the political, but again, many of the responsibilities are on their shoulder, again, to not only use the good tools, but also to have this overall process which infuse that and take it for the long term, not only asking at one specific moment and then do this program, and then it's how you involve them and make them responsible. I think it's also an answer. It's not only asking and taking even into account their point of view, but it's to make them responsible for that. And in this city in Plessé, as far as there is this party, collective decision, it makes them all responsible for their own future also. But also to make it more possible to involve ourselves like that, we have to work less. So I don't know, but then it's more I would say the process of making decision and the importance, the value you give to what is produced, and the question then really, the games or the tools or the methods we would use. But yeah.
One a project made in California, in San Francisco. It was the most horrifying poverty district on the hills. We call it Potrero Hills. And it was a public project, housing project. This housing project was so scary that the postman would never enter the community. He would put the letters at the gate of the compound and just leave, because he didn't have the courage to actually drive the post car into the compound. The compound is huge. Most of the population is African American. A lot of drugs, a lot of crimes, a lot of single families. So the company I was working at was given the project to renovate this entire complex. And I was 21 and the most brave person in the office. They sent me. Maybe because I'm Asian, they think they will hate Asian less than a white person in San Francisco. And I was 1 year out of college. And for a while, there was an attempt to talk to the inhabitants to say, what do you want your community to be shaped like? It doesn't work. If you start asking them and do surveys, and it's a way of pretending to be taking, but it doesn't work to actually go door to door. And so in a way, in the end, also we try to involve with them in the process of working, for example, in the design process also, making the drawings and making models. And we set up an office inside the compound, and I was going there every day working with them. And it's a good will. It was a very good intention to say, okay, maybe because there's a lot of people unemployed, and they were lining up outside the office 50, 60 in the morning. James, I want to work today. And they're paying by the day. And also it doesn't work. It's a sort of goodwill from the architect to say, yes, we involve you, involve your opinion. So this very complicated question, I'm saying something quite extreme, maybe not the pleasant urban renovation, the very extreme case of urban renovation. In the end, what really moved them was actually seeing what you promise is being done. Because they had so many promises before from politicians to say, we make your place better. It didn't come true. It was just for political things. When they saw the thing was being renovated, things being fixed, they had a very positive, not feedback. They stopped fighting there was a lot of quarreling and fighting, and you are just using us for political. Because I think this kind of thing happened a lot in California at the time. People promising something, politician promise something someday, and maybe get into a position later on, then it goes away. So they always, here you are again. Here you are again. The architect with money and with some kind of promise. They've seen it so much. In the end, it was just action which counted. And all the little goodwill things we did, it was honest, but it didn't work. The questionnaire, the surveys, the involvement of the employee, African American, into the office, they were making side models and doing drawings. But it was more like, we say, lip service in California, lip service. It was pleasant to say we did that, but I know in my heart it didn't make a difference to them or to the community. So in the end, it was action, actually, the real money being done and incrementally. I don't know if it was a very extreme.
Yes, if I can add, the question is very interesting because in the meanwhile they were talking, I was thinking about what to say. And I think it's a question, it's a problem, it's an issue of mentality, because it's not only involving, but it's to create a system where people are not the last part of a production chain. Okay, and this is what you were saying. For example, where I live in Bologna, that area, people has this tradition, even my grandparents, to stay outside. So if you offer to them to do something outside, it can be a little market or a small concert or everything, they because it's a mentality, they quickly, yes, and they take part. So it's a mentality that we have to grow up. And I think that it could be, for the young generation, start with the university, as what we also say, Sophie and me, in these days talking, because young people has a different mentality compared to mine. And this is very important because it's a mentality that you have to put when you start to teach design, architecture, art, and so on. Because it's not otherwise, if I feel like a part of a chain, I'm not involved, and on the contrary, I don't want to take part. This is the problem. Thank you for the question.
There's a lot of things that we should and could talk about, but there is a time limit to it, I imagine. So I'm very thankful for the discussion. So Sofia, Marinella, and James, thanks a million for all of your insights. And hopefully we'll see each other again on millions of other forums. And you're dearly invited to Poznań. So thank you a lot.
Thank you, Agnieszka.
Thank you for